Institutionally racist, the latest shocking accusation to rock the world of cricket. An emotional Azim Rafiq told MPs of his inhuman treatment while playing for Yorkshire, even as he mourned the death of his baby.
I've just carried my son from the hospital to the graveyard, and how I'm getting treated here is not right.
So what next then for the sport of cricket, both at county level and beyond? Also tonight.
Are you scared? You have
no, I'm not scared.
We're on the French coast with the migrants desperate to make it to Britain at almost any cost. Trying to stem the sleaze, the government proposes a clampdown on MPs' outside earnings. And are you sitting comfortably? A self-proclaimed dull man unveils his latest bright idea.
I think people are fed up with calendars like David Beckham and six-pack firemen. Benches are the new black, and this is what people want now.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The former Yorkshire cricketer Azim Rafiq set out in graphic and devastating detail today the shocking racism he's experienced within the sport. At times close to tears, Azim told MPs that from an early age he had been subjected to abuse. In the Yorkshire dressing room, he was racially abused and made to sit near the toilets alongside other Asian players. He said racism was ingrained in the sport, with victims too scared to speak out. But he said he's now making a stand because, as things currently stand, he doesn't even want his son to play the game. Here's our sports editor, Steve Scott.
The day cricket hung its head in shame. For a long time, no one listened to Azim Rafiq. Now everyone is, as he recounts a harrowing catalogue of racism he suffered at the hands of his Yorkshire teammates.
There was comments such as, "You lot sit over there near the toilets," elephant washers. The word was used constantly, and there just seems to be an acceptance in the institution from the leaders, and no one ever stamped it out.
Rafiq told MPs he decided to expose what was going on when he was offered little support following a personal tragedy, the stillbirth of his first son.
I've just carried my son from the hospital to the graveyard, and how I'm getting treated here is not right. And to me, it became very clear that even myself, that I'd been looking the other way. And there's a real problem here, not just Yorkshire, throughout the country. And I'm going to be the one that's going to speak about this.
When the cricket club investigated Rafiq's claims, it found racial harassment not an institutional problem. No one was disciplined.
When I saw that post come up, I was staggered. I was like, at what point are these people, are they going to read the room? So I think even as close as 2 weeks ago, they genuinely felt they could hide this.
At times, Rafiq says he was suicidal. He begged the sports governing body, the ECB, for help. But despite his desperation, he says they said they couldn't interfere.
If someone else had told me that they were suicidal, and then he was ringing you saying, please help, I'd forget the Constitution and any regulatory, and I'd jump straight in and go, right, we need to help the human, because it left me over the winter. There's been some really dark moments.
The man who resigned as Yorkshire's chairman over the crisis said when he tried to do the right thing recently, he was blocked at every turn.
There was a clear resistance to see Azim as the victim, a clear resistance to apologise.
When challenged today, the ECB defended its anti-racism and diversity strategy, but admitted rolling it out had not been effective.
What we have struggled with is getting our first-class game to wake up to the same extent. And that is the point. That is, we are at that stage now where I think we are, if not already in an emergency, then we are approaching one.
An emergency, yes, but thanks to Azim Rafiq's bravery, it's undoubtedly a turning point too.
Well, Steve, you say it's a turning point, but where does cricket go from here?
Well, there's no question, Mary, that today has been a shameful day for cricket, but I think the day that it absolutely needed to move forward. Azim Rafiq today talked of many things, but he talked of racists and he talked of bystanders. Some of them very, very well-known names, and you can only hope that today proved a real stark education for both of those groups and gave the bystanders the courage to come forward in the future. But look, there's a caveat to all this. We've seen this in other sports in the country who've launched their own investigations, come up with new guidelines into their cultures, into abuse, into racism. And it's all very well coming up with these new guidelines, but if no one in authority is monitoring it, then they can prove to be pointless. I think that means for cricket, they need a mechanism whereby players in the future can report racism with the confidence that something will be done, whoever the name behind it is.
OK, Steve, thank you. Now, ITV News has filmed the moment around 50 migrants boarded a dinghy in northern France to cross the Channel to the UK. The group, which included at least one woman and 2 children, said they were from Iraqi Kurdistan. Now, it comes as record numbers have made the crossing in recent days, raising tensions between the UK and French governments. From northern France, our correspondent Dan Rivers has this eyewitness report.
Jubilant as they emerge from the dunes with a craft. This is the moment these migrants realise nothing now stands in their way. Children are carried as the men surge forward with the dinghy. It's not easy, but the momentum is now unstoppable.
Are you scared? You have
No, I'm not scared. No? Inshallah, bi'idhnillah. Allahumma salli ala nabiyyina. 5 years prison.
He may have been in prison, but these Iraqi Kurds think freedom lies just over the channel. Spaces on the boat are limited. An undignified scramble.
This launch is utterly brazen. There is not a single policeman around here. They've waited till it's daylight, and we've probably got 50, I would guess, migrants, many of them who claim they're from Iraq, determined to cross the world's busiest shipping lane.
The boat is full, but this man is determined not to miss his chance. Eventually, his fellow passengers do make room, but there are some left on the beach, perhaps with the smugglers who organised this voyage. As the dinghy disappears into the fog, we spot another boat launching further down the beach. The migrants know once they are afloat, the French authorities are powerless to stop them under international maritime law. The police eventually show up an hour after the boats have departed. There appears to be little urgency to their patrol and no sign this industrial-scale people trafficking operation will be halted anytime soon. It was only yesterday that the French and British governments put out a joint statement saying they aim to stop 100% of these crossings. But from what we've seen today, that ambition is a very long way off. We saw an armada, really, of boats crossing the channel, coming in to Dover. The resources devoted to this were extraordinary. 4 lifeboats, Coast Guards and Border Force cutters. We understand up to 50 migrant vessels in total made it across. It's a very long way from being solved, this crisis.
OK, Dan Rivers in northern France, thank you. Here, more details have emerged about the man suspected of carrying out the Liverpool bomb attack. Imad al-Swilman was a failed asylum seeker who'd converted to Christianity. A charity worker who met him recently told ITV News something must have gone dreadfully wrong. Searches continued at a property in the city today as detectives investigate what may have led to the attack. From Liverpool, here's our North of England reporter, Hannah Miller.
At the house where Imad al-Swilman had lived for some time, a search for the cause of Liverpool's terror attack. An asylum seeker who'd been in the country for at least 7 years, he received help from a local charity 5 months ago when he asked for clothes.
How did you feel when you first saw what had happened?
It's just horrible when something like this happens. And we are all struggling to come to terms with it. because you always look for the best in people, and generally you get it. And I don't know what's wrong with this guy, but something has gone dreadfully, dreadfully wrong somewhere.
Al Swealmean lived with a Christian couple when he converted to the religion in 2017. They say he'd previously struggled with his mental health, but they have no doubt of his faith.
He was very inquiring. He was, I thought at that time, certainly very genuine. And he took great delight in learning new things.
So much so that in 2018 he enrolled on a 9-month cake decorating course. What happened in the next 2 years to lead to this scene outside Liverpool Women's Hospital remains far from clear. Searches are still going on at a second property here, which Imad Al Swealmean is said to have rented. It's thought he only came to this street recently and isn't someone that neighbours knew well. With fears that details of the attacker could inflame tensions, today local leaders tried to reassure people living close to the scene.
We were really thinking what next. We had second thoughts on our security.
Police saying it could be some weeks before they have a full understanding of what happened.
This is a fast-moving investigation, but then it's also, it's slow time in terms of the way in which we deal with the scenes. There will be an increased policing presence right across Merseyside.
But this investigation is now raising new questions about how long people can spend caught up in the asylum system and what it was about Al Swealmean's life in Liverpool that led to this weekend's attack. Hannah Miller, ITV News, Liverpool.
A judge has ruled that a former aide to Colonel Gaddafi did play a part in the death of PC Yvonne Fletcher. 25-year-old PC Fletcher was shot while policing a demonstration against the Libyan leader in 1984. Today, the High Court ruled that Saleh Ibrahim Mabrouk was instrumental in the plan to use violence at the protest. And the Manchester City defender Benjamin Mendy has been charged with 2 more counts of rape, bringing the total number of allegations against him to 6. The 27-year-old has been on remand in custody since his arrest in August. He's due to appear at Stockport Magistrates Court tomorrow. Now, the Prime Minister has proposed a ban on MPs working as paid consultants to try to calm the anger over the sleaze row. Boris Johnson also called for the House of Commons Code of Conduct for MPs to be updated. Our political reporter Shihab Khan is in Downing Street. This is all new, isn't it, Shihab? Will it go far enough, do you think?
Yeah, there are a number of significant proposals put forward by the Prime Minister. It includes preventing MPs from working as paid consultants or lobbyists and also putting limits on the amount of work they can do outside of Parliament to ensure that their constituents remain their priority. Now, remember, this all started almost 2 weeks ago when a former Conservative MP, Owen Paterson, was forced to resign after he was found to be breaking lobbying rules. And there's been criticism of the government of the way they've handled that and what some say was an attempt to try and overrule that finding. Now, if you're questioning the strength of feeling on the government's own benches, just have a listen to what the former Prime Minister Theresa May had to say when she was talking about it this morning.
Owen Paterson broke the rules on paid advocacy. And the attempt by Right Honourable and Honourable members of this House, aided and abetted by the government, under cover of reform of the process, effectively to clear his name, was misplaced, ill-judged and just plain wrong.
Now, I understand that the letter that Boris Johnson has written to the Speaker of the House of Commons to detail his proposals is him just putting forward some principles, and it will be MPs from across different parties who will be deciding the finer details of that when they debate it tomorrow in the House of Commons.
Shane, thank you. Still to come in the ITV Evening News, Queen Rania of Jordan's message for our Queen as she meets Charles and Camilla, and
we like to sit down on them to rest our weary feet.
The bench enthusiast hoping his dedication will inspire a Christmas hit. But first, the issues facing people with hearing difficulties have been highlighted by the incredible performance of Rose Ayling-Ellis in Strictly Come Dancing. But figures given exclusively to ITV News show that problems accessing proper support start at a young age. A survey by the National Deaf Children's Society found that 2/3 of teachers in England say they don't know how to educate deaf pupils. and more than a third believe they aren't receiving specialist support to do so. Now, there are around 35,000 deaf children in English schools. On average, they achieve a grade lower at every stage than their hearing classmates. Ben Chapman went to a school in Chesterfield, which is one of the few with a specialist unit for deaf children.
What for you was the best thing about the History Man?
If learning is so often about listening to the teacher, then it's important everyone can understand what's being said. At this school in Derbyshire, deaf children receive extra support to keep up with their hearing classmates.
Why didn't they?
But elsewhere, too few teachers are ever trained to know what they need, according to the head teacher here.
They miss a lot of incidental things that we all take for granted. There are times when that classroom environment is too bustly, it's too noisy, and there are too many things to distract the children's hearing that they do have.
That's what happens to 9-year-old Thomas.
No, shouted Granny as her hearing aid began to whistle furiously.
One-on-one with his mum, he learns well, but he struggles in class, and despite wearing hearing aids in both ears, he doesn't qualify for funding for dedicated support in school.
Sometimes I don't quite understand what the teacher's saying. I just get so confused and I don't know what I'm doing.
Because of the lack of the experience that his teachers have had with deaf children, he tends to get treated the same as any normal child. But he does have this additional need with his hearing.
Public awareness of deafness has been raised by Rose Ayling-Ellis's performances on Strictly. Charities have praised her silent dance at the weekend, but say teachers need more specialist support in schools.
Seeing Rose perform on Strictly is just transformational, so I think we have an opportunity to ensure that in the classroom, deaf children do get that support from Teach the Deaf, but also from mainstream teachers.
The government says it's increasing funding for all children with additional needs, but campaigners say more teachers with specific expertise are needed if deaf children are to realise their full potential. Ben Chapman, ITV News, Derbyshire.
The number of workers on the UK payroll has jumped to well above pre-pandemic levels in the first month since the end of the government's furlough scheme. But job vacancies, such as in the hospitality and haulage areas, have hit a record high. Younger children have become more overweight after lockdown. That's according to new figures from the NHS Digital, which show more than a quarter are obese by the time they leave primary school. And the singer Will Young handcuffed himself to the gates of a legally operating puppy breeding centre in Huntingdon earlier today. He joined a long-running protest by campaigners to shut down the site, which is a global supplier of animals for biomedical research. Jordan's Queen Rania has told ITV News how the world must act together to tackle climate change or we'll all lose out. She also praised Prince Charles as a leading figure in saving the planet as he visited her country with the Duchess of Cornwall. It's the couple's first royal tour for 2 years, and as our royal editor Chris Shipp reports from Jordan, Queen Rania also had a message for our own Queen.
Royal tours are back on. This hasn't happened since the pandemic began, but when Prince Charles and Camilla flew into Jordan today, they did so on board the RAF's first ever flight using sustainable jet fuel. Still polluting, yes, but emitting less carbon. The COP26 climate change summit might be over, but even on the River Jordan today, at the site where Jesus was baptised, Charles and Camilla saw how humans are damaging the natural world. Jordan is the second most water-scarce country on the planet, a point Jordan's Queen Rania spoke to ITV News about today.
We have done some great damage to our planet. The prognosis here in the Middle East is quite dire. So in our region, we're expecting warming to be at double the global average.
As Prince Charles meets heads of state on this tour, like King Abdullah, he is determined to keep the climate crisis high on the agenda, and his decades of campaigning on it has not gone unnoticed.
I'm just glad that people have actually started to understand what he's been saying for so long and to understand the urgency of his words.
The British and Jordanian royals are very close. Camilla even got a lift in Queen Rania's electric car. And this queen sent her best wishes today to our queen after her recent poor health.
She's somebody I look up to personally. We're always concerned for her health, but she's a strong woman, you know, and she, even at this age, is very active. Our best wishes are always to her, and hopefully she'll have many more years ahead of her.
Prince Charles phoned his mother before he left the UK. He and Camilla are in the Middle East for 4 days. Chris Ship, ITV News, Amman, Jordan.
A little bit of TV royalty now, and the contestants for the new series of I'm a Celebrity have been confirmed ahead of the launch on Sunday. Among the 10 famous faces taking part are Good Morning Britain's Richard Madeley, former BBC Breakfast presenter Louise Minchin and footballer David Ginola. And finally, why a calendar featuring benches in the West Midlands town of Redditch could be this year's surprise hit. It's been compiled by Kevin Beresford, who describes himself as the UK's dullest man. Kevin's previous calendars include Britain's best roundabouts, but his latest could be the most successful yet. Chloe Keedy went for a sit-down chat.
We like to sit down on them to rest our weary feet. Sometimes you might sleep on them. I used to do my coaching on a bench when I was young. So it's the tranquility of a bench that you can just walk up to it and sit down.
But not before he's inspected it and given it marks out of 10. According to Kevin Beresford, this is one of the best benches in Redditch, one of 12 that impressed him so much, he was moved to make them into a Christmas calendar. What do you look for in a bench?
You've got the location, the design of the bench, I look for those then like quality benches, that you can actually sit and on a beautiful summer's day, just ponder.
This isn't the first of Kevin's unusual hobbies to hit the headlines. He's spoken passionately as president of the UK Roundabout Appreciation Society. He's a member of the Dull Men's Club, a group that celebrates the ordinary, and has previously produced calendars featuring car parks, cranes, and even the calves of England footballer Jack Grealish.
He's got the calves of a Greek god.
But, as he tells me from the makeshift production line in his flat, it is benches that are his current bestseller. Ever present, often overlooked, yet surprisingly versatile.
If we get off our horse and we can't get back on and there's one close, then we just use it to get back on him.
Today, because I've got a puncture, somewhere to rest my bike and see if I can fix it.
I think people are fed up with calendars like David Beckham and six-pack firemen. Benches are the new black, and this is what people want now.
Next year, Kevin plans to put that theory to the test once again with a calendar of Britain's best rubbish tips. Chloe Keedy, ITV News, Redditch.
Something to look forward to. That's it. Tom's here at 10 from me and the team. Bye-bye.